Have you ever prayed for a relationship that has still ended? Did my breakup mean I hurt God wrong? Was the breakup God's protection or your greatest loss? How can God help me in my most painful breakup? So, for our today's topic, we are going to talk about Christian romantic breakups. Hi, beloved. This is Doc Gilbert, and I am a Christian clinical counselor and psychologist. Hi, guys. Happy Tuesday. And it's been a while. I'm sorry I wasn't able to upload a video or record a video for the past almost 1 week because I've had the flu. It's so difficult to experience that. And it's so, very unfortunate, and I needed to rest. It was, in a way, a forced rest, and I needed to take care of my body, and I wasn't able to actually do any counseling for the past days. Even like I've been wanting to do my jogging because I've been building up my endurance and stamina as a coach. One of my hobbies and sideline, although it's not a job. I do not have like a salary for that, but yeah. How are you guys? It's been a while. I hope, guys, you're okay physically. So drink vitamin C. I hope that you'll have a good rest. And it's really glad that I'm back here. And yeah, so well, for today's episode, we are going to talk about another painful topic, which is romantic breakups. So, in my counseling, I've handled actually different stories of breakups, whether married, couples, boyfriend and girlfriend. And of course, there is no easy way in dealing with that. We are talking about grief, pain, even for some. And for many of my counselees are, there is a component of trauma, through betrayal, infidelity, or ghosting, and different stuff like that. And for Christians, many of them are actually asking, did they hear God wrong? Many of them actually were asking, do they not have enough faith? So yeah, so it creates a lot of confusion when many from their own beliefs and perceptions about God, that God has destined someone for them. This belief, it goes way back, from earlier theology, and there's so-called what do you call that? It was taught to us in one of our doctorate classes, where there is a belief that God predestined something, including our love life. So actually, it's incorrect and misleading because God honors our free will. Uh, God support us with much discernment and wisdom with the partners that we are going to choose, but He is not gonna control us with what we are going to do. Now, He's not gonna predestine our partners, just for the sake of fulfilling His will. So God is omnipotent. He is also beyond time, so He can see. So forgive my voice; it's kind of coming still from the effects of flu, the cough and colds. But yeah, going back to that, God is not boxed with time. He can see our future, but it doesn't mean He willed that for us. For example, when I teach about trauma, I always like explain that the trauma that happened to us is not God's will for us. So think about that. Like, if you are a father or a mother and you have a kid, and can you say that in order to teach your kid a lesson, you allowed your kid to be sexually abused or raped or physically beaten up. So, in order for them to grow, to learn independence or to mature, so it's, when we use our critical thinking, it's actually absurd for a healthy and good parent to allow their kids to be abused in order for them to teach a certain lesson. Of course not. If you are a healthy and secure parent, you're not gonna do that. You're gonna protect your kid by all means. Even with your own life, and yeah. So when we use that analogy and understanding this like principle that God allowed the trauma that happened to us, it's like we are equating God as a bad God, a bad father, an evil one because he allowed certain trauma, to happen to us, but in reality, when we look at it holistically, God did not allow abuse, trauma to happen to us. These are the results of someone else's sin, the consequence of the parent's sin, the cursed generational curses that was passed on. These are the free will that was misused, abused, used against other people. And that's not something that God cannot stop in a way, but it's not because He doesn't want to, but He just, can't because He honored and respected our boundary. He honored our free will. So the same is true, with predestination of romantic relationship, the people that you're gonna marry. Of course, God can see what will happen in the future, but it doesn't mean He predestined that. So many from these beliefs from Christian are founded by, you just need to pray more. God will give you a sign. Although, of course, do not get me wrong. We need the Word of God, the guidance of the Holy Spirit, the testimony, witnesses of others. But even with that, like, there's a lot of cases that I've handled and I've heard that even with a lot of, let's say godparents, mentors, this specific person ended up with a narcissist, with a toxic and abusive person. So still, we need to accept that we are actually a blinded being as well. We have blind side. We have our own biases, perceptions, worldviews. So, yeah, I mean, so many from these Christians are coming from that belief, that God, through His Word, through mentors, predestined someone in order to fulfill a certain will, and if you do not obey, you're sinning against God. There it also demands obedience, and if not, you're gonna feel guilty about it. You're gonna feel ashamed. Why, as a Christian, am I not following God? But this is also the same reason that some and many Christians are actually stuck from being in an abusive relationship, in a toxic relationship, in a narcissistic relationship. And many try to, wrestle with God with this belief until their physical safety are compromised, even to the point of like life and death. There are a lot of cases, with the physical abuse that with domestic violence of partners actually can lead to like killing the partner, unalive the partner. So like there is a danger if you are partnered with a psychopath, a narcissistic psychopath. So yeah, and for my counselees, I'm trying to, one by one debunk these beliefs, with reality coupled with God's word, teaching gently right theology, in viewing our free will, our need for boundary, our need for physical safety, our need to be for our needs to be acknowledged and be met. So Yeah, so it's a long process of helping them see the reality in order for them to ground themselves with this truth, and eventually, would decide that these beliefs are actually not true, and that they have the choice to leave, these toxic and abusive relationships. But of course, it's not just about the abusive relationships, but in romantic relationships in general. Okay, so yeah, we're gonna see some of the reasons why Christian romantic relationships tend to have a breakup. So yeah, so why is it possible for Christian, romantic relationships to go on and have their own separate ways to break up, and which is that this is one of the most painful experiences that a person can actually have. So first, of course, there are differences in values or life goals. So that could be one of the major reasons. For example, when it comes to career, uh there is like a mismatch. This person needs to go to abroad, and this person wants to pursue his or her dreams, which actually could affect the proximity or the physical meet up, the frequency of having a bond together, which could actually lead to in lessening of intensity in terms of emotional connection, with attachment, with love, a lesser and lesser time to spend together, not being able to really listen with one another because of distance. And that could be one of the reasons. For some, it could be because of family, So many here from our Filipino culture tend to have this, adult kids who are being the breadwinner of their own families, that they are burdened, have these responsibilities to support their own families, their siblings, in their studies, uh, to provide food and bills, and be the sole provider in terms of expenses. And that could actually also affect the romantic relationship, like the plans for being married, uh individuating, have their own family, would actually be hindered by this. And that could actually also lead to separation, because one partner could actually want to assert in having his or her own family, the need to have, be married, start their own families, have kids. And for this other partner, his or her priority could be, just providing financially. And that could be very hard, For some, they're able to navigate that, but for some also, this became a reason for separation. And of course, in terms of values, we cannot neglect this lifestyle, So lifestyle is someone's way on how his or her uh values are spent, in how this person uses his or her money, time, hobbies, energy, uh solitude time, basically how this person navigate the world, using his or her resources, the time, finances, relationships. So there are also like mismatch of lifestyle. For example, I have a counselee who is a Christian, and the former partner is also a Christian, but the person's lifestyle is in alcoholism, partying, but this another person is not doing that anymore. So there is also a mismatch of lifestyle, which actually, although that's not the sole reason that they did break up, but that's one of the major factors that lead up to that. And of course, there is mismatch vision. So vision is how we see the future and our paths and plans and goals towards it. So vision is more on a long-term process, on what we want to achieve, what we want to experience in our future. So yeah, so that could also be the reason, So, for example, a person is a missionary and his or her partner is in corporate. So, yes, of course, in terms of married life, this missionary would want to be with his or her spouse, right? But the other wants to, elevate, grow, and succeed in corporate ladder, in corporate achievements. So like there is mismatch of vision that could actually end up to, separation. So another major reason is the immaturity or emotional unpreparedness of one or the other partner or both of them. So for example, in terms of emotional regulation, so when we talk about emotional regulation, it's how we manage and cope with difficult or intense emotions, such as anger, sadness, anxiety. So with that, because of the immaturity or emotional unpreparedness, couples or a partner, could actually outburst in anger, or for, in terms of anxiety, this partner would actually be anxious of, cheating or infidelity, of not having his or her needs met, and the other would feel like not being able to give enough or not feeling enough, so there is like not there is absence of healthy emotional regulation, which, could actually deepen the conflict. It can deepen the wound, and the emotions are not heard enough. It's not processed because, one partner to another became reactive. When one is angry, the other is gonna respond with anger. So there is no conflict resolution with that. Needs are unmet and trampled, and thus, and when it's not resolved, it is buried under, and when triggers come, it would be reignited, thus deepening the wound of this like conflict. So these situations of not being able to regulate our emotions actually, for the couples, piled up. It piles up this conflict to the point that it's like a volcano that would erupt anytime. With which, of course, when the volcano erupted, we know that there is chaos, harm, death. When it comes to Christian romantic relationships, it comes to the death of the relationship. And yeah, in connection with that, pretty much intertwined with the attachment styles. All of us have our own attachment styles. I know I've discussed that with one of our episodes. So there are 4 attachment styles, secure attachment, avoidant, anxious, ambivalent, and, with the attachment styles, in order for the couples to grow healthily, and even, of course, not going into breakup is just a bonus, but more on like if the couple wants to grow in their relationship in a healthy way, they must try to earn and work out to have this secure attachment style, where, the person is able to listen, empathize, sit in with the difficult emotions, emotionally regulate his or her anger, hurt, disappointment, and is able to connect with the partner at the difficulty, with the conflict, and is able to be at peace even, they are not physically together. There is sense of safety and security, and when there is conflict, they are able to listen and forgive and empathize with one another. So those are like the components of secure attachment in a romantic relationship. But for many people, many have insecure attachment styles, like the anxious, avoidant, and ambivalent attachment styles. And, this kind of attachment actually leads to the emotions not being processed. Now, it could either be like it's outbursting for the other, and for another, for the avoidant, it's being like covered up, set aside, minimized. So, which of course, emotions are only signals from our body, and it signals that an important need is unmet. It's not acknowledged. That's why there are negative emotions. So, and when needs are unmet, the love tank of a partner is not being filled. It's becoming dry. It's becoming empty. And when it becomes empty and wounded, uh, and it piled up, we know that, it's not gonna work anymore. So, yeah. So, and some, for many couples actually, they lack like relational skills, such as the skill of empathy, conflict resolution, being able to listen, reflect, and even like how to forgive and reconcile. So these things are, the things that I'm also teaching with my to my counselees, and to some of the workshops and webinars, seminars that I've been doing. So yeah, I mean, it's very important for couples, whether like married or boyfriend and girlfriend relationship, to attend such webinar or seminar or workshop that could enhance their relationship skills, that could lead, for them to understand one's attachment. It's gonna be very helpful and beneficial for couples to have their own counseling or therapy. So I usually like suggest that with my individual clients or counselees who have their own partners or married partners, So yeah, which lead us, why is it important to have counseling? With self-awareness. So this immaturity, this emotional unpreparedness are actually stemming from lack of self-awareness. So, and when we lack self-awareness, we tend to project, displace, transfer, or, just outbursts our triggers, the emotional reactions, emotional experiences that we are not able to process with our own trauma and grief, or with our own family dysfunction and toxic dynamics. And it would come out to our romantic relationships. So yeah, so it's very important to grow in self-awareness, but without it, the pattern that we've learned from our own family dynamics, which are, for example, the toxic dynamics and the dysfunctions, we're gonna bring it to our romantic relationship, because that is, a parallel with our own family. Romantic relationship is the most intimate. Of course, married relationship is the most intimate form of relationship. So in our most intimate relationship, that's where actually our wound would come up, and because that's, we're gonna feel safe, hopefully, and that's, these are the objects in terms of psychodynamic theory. Objects in terms, when I say object, these are relationships that mirror our past important relationships. So it's very important to grow in self-awareness, because we're gonna project, the anger, the loss, the pain to our partners, and many times, I've witnessed that with my counselees, So when we're able to process the current breakup, and the person is able to achieve significant healing from that, so it's natural to, actually, these wounds from the family would come up, and then that's the time that we are able to process their own trauma, how this, for example, the betrayal of a partner leads to trigger a trauma from the family betrayal, or how this abandonment of this partner triggered the emotional abandonment of a father or a mother. So we are able to process that in counseling, but actually that adds up to the emotional reactivity of a person. What makes it emotional? A person emotionally unprepared, to be in a romantic relationship. And of course, I'm not saying that one can be perfect, which is that's very impossible. No one can be perfect, but there is, what we call significant healing that could prepare a person. There is enough emotional regulation. The person is aware of his or her attachment style and is working in his or her own therapy, to go and earn this secure attachment. The person is willing and learning relationship skills and healing his or her own trauma and grief. So yes, that's gonna be very beneficial. And in connection with all of this, the lack of emotional regulation, insecure attachment styles, the lack of self-awareness, of course it could lead to many and more and piled up unresolved conflict, thus experiencing unmet expectations, unmet needs, like building up unrealistic expectations with coming from their own perceptions and worldviews. So these unresolved conflicts would fester and could really lead to the breaking of the relationship, which actually could lead to this another factor, which is the personal growth and change. So there is one partner who is doing the inner work, growing in self-awareness, healing from their own trauma and grief, able to understand themselves, and the other partner is not doing the work. This person is not willing to go deeper, to have an inner look, to self-reflect, what makes this conflict continue on. There's not like effort to resolve or to look oneself or to go the distance in order to meet this partner who is doing the inner work. So that actually creates a space and distance in terms of growth and change. And in reality, I always say it to my counselees that you cannot change and heal your partner. Yes, there could be mutuality. If there is mutuality where both partners are working out themselves, listening with one another, fostering safety, extending empathy and compassion, like growing in their own self-awareness, then that could be a healing relationship for both of them. But if it is not, the one partner is doing the work but the other is not, then the partner who is doing the work could actually feel burnout, and this person could decide to set boundary and finally like individuate from his or her partner. So that could actually lead to the separation, and there is no mutuality in terms of growth or in terms of like willingness and decision to grow individually. So that could it could make an impact in the relationships. And yeah, that could be one of the reasons. And I've witnessed that in counseling, in terms of breakup. And of course, we have temptation and betrayal. So many from these breakups are because of infidelity. One partner is cheating. There is broken trust, broken safety. This victim, did not feel safe anymore. Experience anxiety, depression, this betrayal trauma. So, and I've handled like counselees who've experienced that. So that's a very, very painful experience. And with the partner who did this infidelity, or breaking the trust of the partner, is not willing to change and is not doing the work, not going for therapy, not going for accountability, no remorse, no trying to change one's behavior. So actually that could lead to separation and breakup. And yeah, for many, for some, they stayed in the relationship, especially if it's an abusive one. There is so-called like the trauma bond, where the victim was love bombed by the perpetrator, and then the perpetrator would attack the victim, you know, verbally, physically, and then would love bomb again and use all these tactics like gaslighting, manipulation, deception. And this victim is stuck with this cycle, this pattern. And of course, the victims are also operating from their own traumas, like something familiar from their own family, where they were abused. So they stick with that. That's why the trauma bond is being reinforced. But yeah, I've had counseling that was able to break through, like break from this trauma bond from her husband. And yeah, but for many people, they stayed. For some, it leads to breakup. Okay. And then lastly, of course, there are like external pressure. I know it's related with what I talked about earlier. Like financial needs, family pressures, career demands, that could lead to the physical separation, not being able to meet the needs emotionally and even sexually of a partner. And actually, that could also lead to the temptation of finding another person, to just meet those needs. So these are the factors that could actually lead to breakup. And these are the common themes that I've also listened to in my own counseling profession. So how do we heal from our Christian breakup? So number one, of course, we need to acknowledge our pain. And you need to learn how to sit in with your own emotions, such as the sadness, the grief, the anger. And these emotions are signal that your safety, your security are shattered, in a way, because you've invested your emotions, your time, your finances, your efforts, just to be with the person. And eventually, separation and breakup happened. So, yeah, you need to learn how to validate, give empathy, give compassion to this part of you, that is aching. And that's also normal. And, allowing yourself to feel these emotions without guilt and shame. Okay? And second, you can actually lament and bring your pain to God. And there's a lot of books in the Bible like Lamentations and Psalms, that could actually echo your pain of what you're going through. You can be authentic to God in your suffering. Jesus is close to the brokenhearted. You can open up the wounds unto Him and just release your anger, your grief, your pain, anything that you feel towards God. You may use journaling or like writing to your notebook. You may use a time of worship while worshiping. You just let it out, have your own cathartic moment. You know, uh, just be honest. God is not intimidated with what you're going through. He knows more than anyone else how what it means to feel the emotions, what it means to be betrayed, to feel disappointment and hurt. And Jesus showed that, when although he did not have a romantic relationship, the pain of these people rejecting him, the disciples betraying him, Judas betrayed him, the disciples abandoned him. So God knows what it means to experience this pain. And of course, it's an opportunity to reflect, to grow in your self-awareness, to identify like what is your attachment style, and to reflect. Counseling could be, it is, gonna help you what led to this attachment style, what's your experience in your family of origin that led to this development, you know uh and then you can identify your patterns, these unresolved emotions and what trauma triggered, from this experience. And of course, it's very important to know, your support system, Now, find your own leader or mentor or friends that you can trust and open up and feel safe. The friends that could be there with you physically, you can have fun with, and could listen and empathize with you. And that's very important. And of course, it's also very important to heal uh, by building up your boundaries. Okay, so you need to set up your boundaries, and I've talked about that in previous episodes. Like you don't, if you need to unfriend, block, hide, archive anything about your ex partner, and do that. We don't need another fire that could fuel this intensity of pain. So with my clients, with counselees, I teach them, what boundary, can you enforce? Can you do for yourself? Because it's gonna protect you. And we don't want to like intensify and add like another bacteria to this festering and painful wound. Okay? And of course, it's very important to learn mindfulness skills that could help you cope and regulate, intensified emotions, difficult emotions. So, like grounding, deep breathing. There's a lot of mindfulness exercise that you can learn from YouTube or from your own counseling or therapy. And you can couple it with self-compassion meditation. So, when there are triggers, when there are negative emotions, you can extend that to that part of you. And of course, it's very important to, if you're ready, to find meaningful activities, that could help you build your relationship outside from this former romantic relationship, engaging in meaningful, healthy activities such as maybe joining a sports club or uh, doing this like different adventures or being with other people or hobbies. So that could actually foster confidence again, being alive, being joyful. You can redirect your energy to positive things, positive activities that could help your mental and physical health as well. And of course, I want to say to you, you know, be patient, because healing is a long, arduous process. It's not an easy path. It's not a short-term process. There is no such thing as linear. I always lead my counselees, to see that there is no linear healing. This like outbursts sometimes, relapses sometimes, those memories that would flash back and make you grieve, make you cry, those are part of the process. And what matters the most is you also learn to celebrate small wins. Let's say you're able to set boundary, that's a small win. You're able to do something meaningful, that's a small win. You're able to share to your friend, that's a small win. So it's very important to notice little progress, little or big progress, in order to like increase your self-esteem, your sense of worth, that you are valuable, you're growing, you're alive, so yeah, that's it. Of course, in conclusion, there is no easy route to heal with Christian breakup. How you wish that this person is God given in a way that God predestined it to you. And just like what you've learned as you listen to this, there's no such thing as that. And yeah, as you grieve this loss, know that Jesus is with you. Know that you can arise and be resilient and overcome this phase of your life. And I've witnessed and seen people, from breakups, they've grown, they've thrived as people, as an individuated person, and they've become like significantly healed individuals. So, and that's also my hope for you, beloved. So that's it. It's really good to be back. And if you've learned something, any insight, reflection, awareness, please do comment down below. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, please share the link of this video. Okay? And if you are new here, welcome to our YouTube channel. Please do subscribe. And by subscribing, you're actually helping the Ministry of Intimacy Philippines that could bring more healing to many people here in the Philippines and beyond. So, yeah, I hope to see you guys in our next episode. See you!